What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with DFS, bringing you a new video going over Sunday, October 10th, Week 5's Sunday main slate. We have 12 games on this slate, and there's a lot of good matchups. There's a lot of injuries that play factors. There's a lot of value this week. I think this week, more than any week, you can have a lot more variety and still have a good chance at cashing. So let's get into it with quarterbacks. Kyler Murray against San Francisco. I think Kyler Murray has deserved his respect for top 5 quarterback this season. The way he's playing, he just knocked off the Rams. I think the Rams were everyone's favorite the first 3 weeks. Them getting stopped by Arizona's defense and Arizona's offense finding a lot of holes in the Rams defense says a lot. So at 8,000 against another division opponent, Kyler Murray is one of the guys that is okay with spending up. Tom Brady right behind him. I'm okay with paying $7,400 for Tom Brady here. Miami's defense is terrible. The offense, Jacoby Brissett is trying to do what Jacoby Brissett can do, which isn't a lot, but he's still trying it. 7,400, I'm probably not as confident just because I see this being one-sided. Tampa Bay is 10-point favorites. But, I mean, if you want to spend up, I'd rather go Kyler or rather pay down. Aaron Rodgers is 7,100. Probably one of my more favorite plays of spending up this week. 7,100 against Cincinnati. Green Bay's banged up defensively. They could be without Jair Alexander, Kevin King. Still be without Darnell Savage, I believe. Just see the injury report. It'll probably be either today or tomorrow morning we see who's going to be officially out. If they're out, that means Cincinnati's offense should be able to move the ball. We've seen them move the ball pretty efficiently this season. I know against Jacksonville they struggled in that first half, but the second half they had almost 300 yards in that second half. So Aaron Rodgers will probably have to throw the ball. Cincinnati does have a good rush defense. We saw them get exposed against Jacksonville. But other than that, they've been pretty efficient. So I'm leaning more towards the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams stack there. Next is Dak Prescott, 6,900 against the Giants. Giants, big divisional game here. Giants finally got a win last week. Dallas has been looking I won't say unbeatable because they've lost, but they've looked very good, very efficient on both sides of the ball as well. Diggs is playing out of his mind right now. Him and Jalen Johnson, both 2-year cornerbacks that are really stepping up and becoming number 1 corners. But him against the Giants, I think it's a very good game for Dak to finally have a big explosive fantasy point game again. 6,900, I like it. We go down to Kirk Cousins against Detroit. With Dalvin Cook banged up, Mattson is there. He's a good play. Detroit is just bad on defense. We've seen what they do in second halves. If they can somehow find a way to do what they do in the second half and move it to the first half, Kirk Cousins becomes a lot more likable for me right now. But there are a couple more plays down here that I like more than Kirk Cousins, but he is there on my radar. I do like that game. Ryan Tannehill is that guy at 6,400 that I really do like against Jacksonville. He finally gets A.J. Brown healthy. He's going to be without Julio, which is a little scary. And Derrick Henry is in play also for me. I think you can get a really good stack there with Tannehill, Henry, and A.J. Brown. For all reasonable prices, too, at that. So, yeah, Ryan Tannehill, 6,400, I do like. Derek Carr, the same thing, I do like against Chicago. Now, Chicago does have a very good defense, but you see if a team is down like Detroit, they move the ball so well against the Bears. Granted, they're in more of a protect the lead type defense, but we've seen people throw the ball against the Bears and do it efficiently. Jalen Johnson has been locking people down, like I said, but the other two are very shaky. So Derek Carr, 6,100. I'd probably lean towards Joe Burrow. Like I said, if Jair Alexander's out, Cincinnati's going to have to throw the ball. They do have Joe Mixon. Maybe. Looks like P. Ryan is going to be in. I lean more towards P. Ryan than Mixon. But Burrow, 6,100. I love his price. His stack is a lot more GPP in my opinion, at 6,100. The running P. Ryan's price and any of the receivers for Cincinnati are very cheap. So that is my more cheap play. You go down 5,700, you get Trey Lance, who we saw put up the 20.38 fantasy points basically in the second half. And I know Seattle didn't game plan for Trey Lance to be in there, but what we did see is Trey Lance be the one play he got against Detroit, touchdown, only throws 18 passes, but for 157 yards. Granted, one of them was a bomb to Deebo Samuel, but he still gets 2 touchdowns, 41 rushes, 5.9 yards a rush, which is very good. But Trey Lance has to be there on your radar at 5,700 against Arizona. A quarterback that can be mobile, so definitely has some value there. All right, let's go to running back now. Now, like I said, Derrick Henry at 9,000 against Jacksonville, I think is a very reasonable price. I'm expecting Derrick Henry to be the 10K McCaffrey that we've got for last year and the year before that. But a very good matchup against Jacksonville here. Julio's still out. A.J. Brown's there, like I said. You could stack this line and still have a decent amount of money to get some more high-end players in there. You're going to have to find value, but there is value to find this week. So paying up for Derrick Henry is totally fine by me. Alvin Kamara, I could finally see him having a good game. I wish they would utilize him in the pass game more compared to the rest of his career. The most targets he's seen this year are 6. And to me, that is just very underused right now. Dalvin Cook, I wouldn't trust Dalvin Cook. He just looks too banged up. If he goes off, he goes off. It's against Detroit, good game script, but his injury status, even if he plays, he might be fully limited. So that's definitely a worry. We go down Ezekiel Elliott at 7,000. They said that he's probably going to be a full good to go, him and Amari Cooper. 7,000, I like him against the Giants here. Big divisional game. Zeke has been back to what Zeke was. I said it in the beginning of the season that this was going to be Zeke's year, and he is proving that right. Even with Tony Pollard playing amazing too. Both of those guys, that offense kind of looks like Cleveland's offense, except Dallas is able to throw the ball more efficiently. But using 2 running backs, utilizing tight ends, it kind of feels like that Cleveland offense. So we'll go down. And speaking of Cleveland, Nick Chubb at 6,700. I think that price is way too good for me for Nick Chubb against the Chargers. With the injuries to Cleveland's pass game, they have one of the best run games. They actually have one of the better run advantages here against the Chargers. 6,700. Nick Chubb is a very, very consistent running back. He's gotten, He's gotten over 14 fantasy points in 3 out of the 4 games. The only one was against the Bears. Other than that, he's come pretty close to 100 yards in every game too, and he's not a receiving back, so he gets all those yards basically on the ground, which is very good. It's the Derrick Henry type running back that you like, and it's very consistent. We go down DeAndre Swift. This guy, when he plays, you look at his fantasy points, all but last week against the Bears yet again, he still gets the 6 targets, 4 receptions, 33 yards. Didn't get a lot of rushing attempts. That team was down the majority of the game, so that also says why. And they utilized Jamal Williams, but still at 6,100, a guy that probably will get you 10 plus fantasy points. You do like there. Chuba Hubbard at 6,000, another. Philly's rush defense has been terrible. Carolina can easily run or throw the ball in this game, depending on what the score is. If Philly can somehow expose Carolina's defense, then Chuba will probably be used. But if Philly is not really moving the ball, Chuba is going to be used quite often. So at 6,000, definitely somebody that I like down there. We keep going down. Obviously, Tony Pollard is in play, just how good he's run the ball. I do like Zeke a lot more. Damien Williams, 5,600 against Vegas. Bill Lazor is officially calling plays again for Chicago, which means that they know how to run the ball. They know how to pass the ball again. We saw what David Montgomery did at the end of the season last year when Bill Lazor was calling plays, and they ran the ball very efficiently with a bad offensive line. They still have a bad offensive line, but they can run the ball efficiently using Bill Lazor's offense. He mixes things up. He doesn't just show his cards. He hides them. So Damien Williams at 5,600 against Vegas. Vegas, a pretty good defense this year, but still trying to protect Justin Fields as much as you can, running the ball, catching the ball. Damien Williams, very good at that, and they're probably going to need it with how good that defensive line is for Vegas. So 5,600 I think is a very good price, a very good play for Damien Harris. Damien Williams. Sorry, now we'll talk about Damien Harris at 5,500 against Houston. We saw what New England did last week against Tom Brady and that Tampa Bay team. They couldn't run the ball against that defense, and I don't blame them. That defense is hard. They just didn't rush at all that game. I think they were negative in yards towards the end, but 5,500 here against a very bad Houston team. Lovie Smith is trying to do what he could do with the pieces he has on that defense. Very hard. A lot of injuries also hurting that defense, but New England is typically a run-heavy team and pass when they need to. And Damien Harris is that guy. You look at his red zone attempts. You can't see it on DraftKings. You go look at it at Football Reference, which what I use for all my stats. He is their red zone guy, especially with James White being out, and there's no clear number 2 running back out there. Damien Harris at 5,500 is definitely somebody that I like. We go down Leonard Fournette at 5,200 against Miami. I think is very interesting to watch for. He's coming out as the number 1 running back there, receiving back. So at 5,200, I like him against Miami. He's more of a GPP than cash, for say, just because Bruce Arians can just throw Ronald Jones out there. Ronald Jones runs a 60-yard, and he's rushing for the entire rest of the game. Mattson, I'd say I'd only be willing to play him if Dalvin Cook is 100% out. That's the only way. Like I said, Dalvin Cook's probably going to be limited, and Mattson's probably going to get those looks, but you just can't tell unless a player is officially out. Eliza Mitchell is back playing against Arizona. He's definitely somebody that I want to get some in GPP lineups. So I'm definitely looking at him, and that's it for running backs. Wide receivers, like I said, a lot of good value here. Devontae Adams against Cincinnati's defense. Think he's the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver this week. Love him at 8,200. Justin Jefferson against Detroit. Like I said, Detroit's defense is very bad, and with a banged-up Dalvin Cook, they might have to throw the ball just a little more, even though they could throw Mattson in there. I get it. They can. But Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen look very good this week. DeAndre Hopkins against a banged-up San Francisco pass defense. San Francisco can score with Trey Lance, and this becomes a shootout. DeAndre Hopkins can easily have one of the best weeks he's had all season, which is what people want. At 7,600, you definitely get a pay down from his normal pricing. McLaurin against New Orleans. Now I know that New Orleans is a very good defense, and Washington with Taylor Heineke, people still don't have trust in Taylor Heineke, and I don't understand why. Just joking. I love Taylor Heineke. I think he's probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks this year. He's got a lot to prove. So, but you've seen the targets that Terry McLaurin has gotten. 14 targets against the Giants in a very close game. The game against Buffalo, not so much. But yet again, we see Atlanta, 13 targets against Atlanta, a game where New Orleans can't, we don't know what to think of New Orleans offense right now. Are they good or are they bad? We don't know. But if that game is close, Terry McLaurin is probably the guy that you want to get on Washington. They do have Curtis Samuel, who is very, very cheap. But Terry McLaurin, still one of the best wide receivers in the league. We go down, Deebo Samuel, 7,100 against Arizona. It's not one of the greatest matchups, but with George Kittle now being out, Deebo Samuel and Brennan Ayook hopefully step up. And I don't mean Deebo Samuel because Deebo Samuel is obviously stepping up. He's a top 5 receiver right now in the league. I'm not saying full-time he's a top 5 receiver, anything like that. Stat-wise right now, he's a top 5 receiver, though. So 7,100 against Arizona, definitely someone I like. Now, Tampa Bay, I would say that Antonio Brown is my favorite wide receiver, especially with the pricing. But obviously Godwin and Mike Evans with 10-point favorites are very good plays here as well. It's just they're not my favorite against Miami. Antonio Brown has a way better matchup than Evans and Godwin do. But if Brady wants them to have the ball, they will get the ball. I feel, and I mentioned him and Justin Jefferson, definitely plays that I like. A.J. Brown at 6,500. Like I said, you could do that stack with Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown only 6,500 against a bad Jacksonville defense. Tennessee is only 4.5-point favorites in this game, which means the game should be close according to Vegas. I don't see it that way, but if it is close, A.J. Brown should have a huge week this week. CeeDee Lamb at 6,200 obviously is somebody that I love to get to. Now we see in big games, Dallas has been able to put up points, and you see CeeDee Lamb's targets. The thing is they're just able to run the ball so good that if they get in a close game, CeeDee Lamb is that guy you want to get to. Against Tampa Bay, 15 targets. Against Chargers, 9 targets. Against Philly when they blow him out, he got robbed of a touchdown. We all know that. But 3 receptions, 3 targets, 66 yards, nothing. Against Carolina last week, that Carolina score is close, but guess what? Dallas was up a huge amount before that even came into a factor. So at 6,200, if this game is close, CeeDee Lamb is probably the guy you want to get to. Brandon Cooks, 6,100. I think it's very interesting for me because we've seen his targets have been 7 or more all season. They get blown out by Buffalo, still gets 7 targets. They had a very close game for a while there against Carolina, gets 11 targets. Close game there against Cleveland until Tyrod Taylor goes down. 14 targets week 1. 7 targets, but very efficient in his targets that game, 132 yards. At 6,100, he's a good pay-down wide receiver. It's just hard to have faith in anything Houston's doing right now. So he's a GPP play, should be 100%, 6,100. Very undervalued for a guy that's gotten 2 games above 20 fantasy points. And his floor is 9 points, which is something that you look for. Keep going down. Kenny Gallaudet, 5,900 against Dallas. Now, Kenny Galladay's not one of my favorite play, but with the injuries in the Giants offense, he's somebody that you have to look at 5,900, especially they're going to have to pass the ball if Dallas is as efficient as they have been offensively this season, utilizing all their weapons, which is scary to see. Kenny Gallaudet is probably a good play here at 5,900. He's not one of my favorite because my favorite are Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Jamar Chase is 5,800. We go down here, Tyler Boyd, 5,300. T. Higgins, 5,000. Out of the 3, T. Higgins is my favorite play. The reason being is T. Higgins has missed the last 2 weeks and has still gotten 50% of the red zone targets for that offense. That shouldn't be a thing. If a guy's out 2 weeks and has still got 50% of the team's red zone targets, that means when he comes back, they get in the red zone, he should be the red zone target guy. And he's very efficient too. I believe he's got a 100% catch rate. Gonna have to go check that out, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was last time I looked. So out of the 3, he's 5,002 at that. Marvin Jones Jr. against Tennessee. Clearly, if Jacksonville is going to be efficient, he's one of the guys. We saw Laviska Shenault step up. I think that's due to DJ Chark being out, but he did step up. He did what he needed to do. But besides last week, Marvin Jones has been that guy that they've looked for. So again, it's Tennessee. And that defense has been very bad. If Jacksonville's going to hang in there, it's going to be with Trevor Lawrence, Marvin Jones, and Laviska Shenault. So definitely somebody I like there. I'm staying away from Henry Ruggs and leaning more towards Hunter Renfro. He's going to have a better matchup in the slot, and he's 4,900. We're finally seeing everyone's been waiting for the Hunter Renfro breakout season, and to me, this is a breakout season. This isn't solidifying him as being an elite wide receiver by any means, but he's finally being utilized as a slot receiver. We saw what he did in Clemson, and he looked like he was their go-to guy. Hunter Renfro was their go-to guy. He's been in the league for a few seasons now. He's been underused when they haven't had receiver help, and he's finally getting targets. at least 6 or more targets in each game, and his yards are pretty consistently there too. 45 was the week low against the Chargers, but 50 to 70 it's not too much to ask for. He did get help the last 2 weeks with touchdowns, but you still see his fantasy points in the 2 weeks he doesn't get touchdowns. It's 10 points for a guy that you're paying $4,900 here. In a game where he's going to have a good matchup against, I think it's going to be Vidor, but I'll have to double check that as well. But 4,900, definitely somebody I like there. Antonio Brown, I mentioned, is my favorite play out of Tampa Bay receivers. He's going to have the best matchup. He's 5,200. Gronk is out. We saw what he did against New England last week. 11 targets. That's what you want. Miami is, in my opinion, a worse defense than New England. I still think they have weapons there defensively, but they're going to have to contain Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, and there's no way they're going to do all three. With Gronk being out, that means more targets go to those three receivers, so I do like that as well. We go down, Jaylen Waddle. Actually, all Miami receivers are more on my mark this week. Tampa Bay, very good rush defense. Myles Gaskin should not have anything. It's going to rely on Jaylen Waddle, Devontae Parker, and Will Fuller. I'll just bring up their prices here. Not Will Fuller. I don't know why I said Will Fuller. Jaylen Waddle and Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker, 5,400, but banged up. So Jaylen Waddle, we've seen Tampa Bay's safeties get burnt. They don't have a lot of speed at corner. At 4,800, it's not my favorite play. I'm not saying that. Definitely should be in your GPP watch, though. At 4,800, a receiver that fast against a very bad pass defense in Tampa Bay. Brennan Ayook, I mentioned earlier, 4,500. We haven't seen him really be utilized at all this season. The most targets he's gotten is 6 against Green Bay. But other than that, 2 and 3. I think with Kittle being out, granted this is still a run-first team, Brennan Ayouk, we saw what he did last season as a rookie. Definitely a big regression year 2, but he just hasn't gotten't and that's just them trying to get him in the offense. So 4,500, definitely GPP play, not a cash. Randall Cobb is definitely somebody that I'm watching for at 4,000. We've seen Green Bay use him, especially with MVS out. He is their third down wide receiver, besides using Devontae Adams all the time. He's somebody you could definitely get to at 4,000. Bryan Edwards at 3,800. I definitely play Renfro more than anybody else in Vegas, but Bryan Edwards is definitely there in a GPP at 3,800 for me. Go down. I'm just trying to find Curtis Samuel. I'll just search Washington yet again. Curtis Samuel down there at 3,000. Adam Humphries is 3,300, but I think Curtis Samuel gets you that 5.9 fantasy points first week he's back against a bad Atlanta offense. Getting week 2 in there. I think as the season goes on, he will just get better and better, and Taylor Heineke or Fitzpatrick, whoever they decide here shortly, we'll see how they use those wide receivers. Tight ends, 7,300. Darren Waller, I'm not confident in. Granted, he's Vegas' number 1 target man, but against Chicago, linebackers play pretty good against tight ends. We saw TJ Hawkinson last week against the Bears. 8 targets, 4 receptions, 42 yards. So it's not a big like there for me. Obviously, George Kittle out, Gronkowski's out, Logan Thomas out, a lot of tight ends out, so you got to find value there. For me, Schultz is probably one of my favorite guys to pay up to at 4,400. Like I said, I'm not too huge on Waller. The rest of them are pretty banged up. TJ Hawkinson, if he does play, has a pretty good matchup against Minnesota. I'm not going to say one of the greatest, but it is good. But Schultz at 4,400 is definitely somebody that I like. Hunter Henry at 3,700 is another player that I like against Houston. We've seen tight ends be used quite often. Not just Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith as well. He's only got 14 receptions on the season this year. And his yards are pretty consistent. But at 3,700, a guy that'll probably get you around 10 fantasy points against Houston's defense this year. Hunter Henry is a guy that I do like a lot. Cameron Breit at 3,300, I think is interesting for cash GPP. He's going to probably be owned quite a bit, just being that number one tight end for Tampa Bay. I'm not sold on him per se, but he is there. Austin Hooper at 3,200, I think is a play that I do like. Yet again, somebody that's been pretty consistent. 5 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets. And he does get red zone targets, which is what you want. They get a matchup against the Chargers this week. Chargers, I'm waiting for them to have an explosive offensive game. I do like Cleveland's run game a whole lot more than I do the pass game, especially with Baker Mayfield being semi-banged up. But at 3,200, Austin Hooper is definitely there just because of his red zone targets. Evan Ingram, 3,200 against Dallas. I think it's kind of ridiculous that the 2 games you've seen him, he's gotten 6 targets. Clearly, they still like to go to their tight end, Evan Ingram. So at 3,200, he's there for me. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I will have a bets video coming out tomorrow morning as well. So if you guys are looking into getting some bets, I will have that posted tomorrow morning. So hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you in the next one.